All right, so we're midway through doing the complete integrated engineering catalog on this 2018 Golf R. Our next big job is gonna be this beautiful new intercooler. In case you missed the first video, let me bring you up to speed. We did a Garrett PowerMax 2260S turbocharger, the integrated engineering downpipe, a stage 3 clutch, pressure plate, and flywheel, new engine mounts as maintenance, and an upgraded pendulum mount to better support the added power. Now our intercooler is a pretty big part of this job, which means we get to take the whole front of the car off. And big thanks to Integrated Engineering for partnering with us on this series. Not only have they been a great partner for a number of years, I also scored you guys a killer discount, so be sure to check out the link in the discount code down in the description. This piece was totally smashed on my yellow car. Something I want to point out while I'm right here taking this part off is I have done a complete bolt-by-bolt, step-by-step DIY on a 7.5 Golf R with an Integrated Engineering intercooler before the bad times. There's a lot of parts that you got to take off to get that full access. We had some impact damage here. Look at that. Got a little crackage. There's so many dead bugs in this car. I don't know if that's a bee or a yellow jacket or what flavor of critter that is. So for the intercooler, I'm gonna take this coolant pipe off, then we're gonna take the fans out, get that all out of the way. That will open up a little bit more room, drain the coolant, then we can fight those terrible clips that are like the worst part of this whole job. It really is the worst part of this whole job. But that will then let us get our intercooler out. Now, when you're doing this, you gotta be real careful you don't drag the fan shroud across the intercooler. Now, I'm gonna drain the coolant out of our radiator and it's gonna make a mess. Be careful here, all this stuff is plastic. Oh, look how much dirt's caked in between there. That alone might give us some extra horsepowers. Oh God. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Come on, detail man. I'll hook the compressor up and blow all that crap out of there. Peasant model Golf R's got me out here sweeping. Warning, this is the worst part of doing this whole intercooler job. And that's the clips that hold the intercooler into the core support. They are awful. They're super thick and a pain in the butt to get out. If you said to me, Charles, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a little cutter and I'm gonna go yoink. I would tell you that's just fine with me. These are also one of those deals where it's probably a good idea to replace, but I forgot to get some. So we're just gonna fight them out. Ugh. There we go. Hate them. There we go. Let's unhook the condenser and we're just gonna carefully just kind of lay this guy here. Be real careful with the condenser. You got some wiggle room, but just be real careful. The old cooler is you, and then this is the dude she told you not to worry about. Talk about feeling a little insecure. All right, so let's talk about some of the differences of these bad boys. Obviously, our upgraded one is quite a bit bigger, right? So that's gonna give us more opportunity to cool the air down. Now, you are adding a bit of weight up front, but the trade-off is well worth it to cool the air coming into the turbocharger. This, if you're going anything more than just like stage 1 software, is basically a mandatory mod. Now this piece right here on the end is the mount I was talking about. This one cracked when we tried to pop the clip, so I'm just going to install it on this one, and then I'm going to run a screw through the middle so that it holds it in place. I'm going to spend a little time cleaning the radiator, cleaning the condenser, just blowing all the dirt and schmutz out of there, 140 whatever thousand miles worth of yuck, and then we'll get this guy installed. Was that necessary? No, but I felt obligated. Look at all this dirt that came out of it. All right, let's get our new freshy intercooler in. I'll be honest, the old one coming out is a little bit easier than the new one going in. One, the new one is a bit heavier, but it's not too bad. Damn those stupid clips, and I'm caught. Oh, in an effort not to fight it, I have fought it. There we go. Now remember, you gotta drop the bottom in first, and then pinch your fingers. Ow! Ow. Oh crap. I was just joking. Ugh. Then we put the condenser on the intercooler, we put the radiator back in, then we put the fans back in. Basically, installation reverse of removal. God, I hate when repair manuals do that. Nice. For all of these parts, it slides into a groove at the bottom and then clips at the top. So we basically have our cooling system completely sealed up. I'm gonna get the funnel put on it and just fill the funnel with coolant so we can let this bubble out while we finish some of the rest of the work that we have to do. Our next major task is gonna be bleeding the slave cylinder. Now, this is not a hard thing to do, but it can kind of be a pain in the butt. Highly recommend doing a pressure bleeder like this one I got here. Well, you need to pump this thing up to 2 bar. Usually you gotta do it once or twice to get all the air bubbles out. All that aeration and all those bubbles, you don't want that in there. Left leg day only. Getting swole. So we got the clutch bled, feels great. Now I need to adjust the shifter cables. If we had just pulled the transmission out, swapped the clutch, and put it back in, we could probably get away without doing a shifter cable adjustment. However, that short shifter was installed with worn transmission and engine mount. Since we put in new mounts, we need to do a readjustment. So, first thing we gotta do is lock the transmission side. Then inside the car, I'm gonna pop the ring up, and then we get to slide our pin, basically, just kind of lock it in. Now we're gonna go set the shifter end links on top of the transmission. And then we're gonna wiggle the pin out. Sometimes that's a little tricky. The next important step, make sure you check your gears. If it's wrong, it's really easy to adjust everything when the intake is out and the battery's out. If you wait until it's all back together, a little more work. Don't forget, if you order this short shifter from Paul, he will come to your house or wherever you are, install them for you, adjust your shifter end cables. He does all the bolts by hand, tightens them with his teeth. He's a real MVP. Most valuable Paul. An important part of all of these mods is we are adding TrueFlex to this Golf R, which means we're gonna be able to run ethanol fuel. And in order to do that, we gotta install this sensor right here into our low pressure fuel system. So on top of the intake manifold, there's a junction. There's 2 clamps right here. We're gonna get rid of this junction in the middle and we're gonna replace it with this guy. In addition to this sensor, we're also going to modify the high pressure fuel pump after this. Why? Like, why? Why do they have to be these stupid dummies? Whoever invented these and the ones that are even more low profile, I hate you. Whoever invented the pliers to overcome it, I like you, we're friends. The cool thing is the orientation of this doesn't really matter, so I'll probably put them like that. Click. I doubt he'll ever want to pull all this stuff out because it's going to be awesome when it's done. But if we can leave it in a place where it doesn't impact anything, right? We don't have any rubbage of the engine cover and we don't have to permanently alter the fuel line, I'd like to do that. Sticking with the theme of fuel, let's rebuild that high pressure fuel pump. Now, there are some things while doing this that you need to take the utmost care. Make sure you're working as clean as possible. I can't stress this enough when doing this rebuild. So I sprayed this all off with brake cleaner and scrubbed some dirt that was on the pump off. Also, look, I got a new pair of these Blue Point best hose clamp pliers for general use. If you're careful, you can use them as hose pliers too. These high pressure fuel pumps do still fail, not at the rate of like the BPYs and the CCTAs though. So it looks pretty good, pretty clean on the inside. I've never actually rebuilt one of this generation, I don't think. I got the pump clamped in the vise. You're gonna need this tool in order to loosen the part we're gonna take off. Get your 1/2-inch ratchet. Ugh, geez. Okay, that's pretty tight. Then we can take this whole little bit out. Then I'm gonna drain the fuel out of this pump. Now we went out to the shed to use the press. Basically what you have to do is you have to press this part of the pin out of this small retainer. And really the only thing we need out of this whole assembly is our spring. Inside of our pump, we have this little collar. All it takes is one little spot of debris to score the piston or damage a seal or something like that. So super duper careful, super duper clean. We're gonna lube this guy up real good. We're gonna install it in this part right here. The tolerances of the IE kit are much tighter than the factory one. Okay. Easy peasy. You can also rotate the engine around to make sure the camshaft is on the flat side of the lobe. Next up, we gotta do our TrueFlex harness. So we got 3 pins we got to address. We have our ground, which is the eyelet. We have our power, which is this chunky double pin. And then we have 1 pin that's gonna go into the ECM. I did a whole crazy long video about how to do wiring. So you can watch that. Super nerdy, but it was fun. Just kidding, it was terrible to make. But we did it anyway, for you. You can see there's a pin, and then on the other side it's empty. So there's actually a bridge that powers up all these fuses, this whole fuse array. I think we're gonna leave the gap. Click. That's the one I just put in. This is the pin that was there on the bridge. So, got the ground, got the power. We need to do our pin. This goes in pin 71, which means we need to disconnect and disassemble this connector. Of course, it's dirty as crap. The problem is the numbers are super tiny and they're caked with dirt. Like, look at all that dirt, even after cleaning the connector out. We found it. We gotta pop that bad boy out and put our pin in that location. Give it a little tuggy tug, we're happy. I'm gonna tidy up all of this, then we're gonna figure out the path we run our connector that actually goes over to our ethanol sensor. After that, boost pipe. And I gotta tell you, putting this pipe on sucks. Sometimes these clamps on these hoses are captive. If they're not, whenever you put them on, clock them in a way that if you have to go back and loosen it, it's easy to get to. Before I put the turbo in, I could have put this on the bench, but no, you had to leave the bevel box on. Before getting the rest of this engine put back together, let's get the spark plugs in. A question I get all the time is, hey Charles, what are the best spark plugs for insert whatever car with whatever mod? And my answer is almost always this. Unless your car is pretty highly modified, similar to what we're doing here, run the factory plugs. There's no need to get fancy. If you have an air intake, just use the stock spark plugs. They're perfectly fine. If you are modified, the best thing you can do is check with your tuner and see what they recommend. We're gonna be using NGK R7437-9. I think these are 2 steps colder than the factory plugs. I ran my yellow car, which had these mods minus the turbo and TrueFlex on stock spark plugs for almost the entire time, and I never had an issue. So with all that out of the way, we're getting dangerously close to our finish line. The first time you start the car up, there's really not gonna be any oil in the turbocharger. We are gonna add some of this turbocharger pre-oil, so this will coat the shaft inside the turbocharger and prevent that. Because we replaced the turbo, we are going to go in with a scan tool and set it to not have variable oil pressure, but it's gonna be for a short period of time, just at full oil pressure. That'll also help prevent any damage to the turbocharger. Last thing we gotta do underneath this car is get our exhaust finished up. This downpipe from IE is 2 parts instead of 1, which makes installing 100 times easier. This car also has a resonator delete back here. So if you did a cat back, you're gonna go from right here, this union, all the way back to your tips. You basically need to loosen everything and then make your adjustments so that all this stuff lines up here. So sometimes it's like a walk everybody into place kind of situation. All right, the last piece is gonna be our intake. Now, you may remember from the Fahrenheit series, we had Larry from Ammo install our filter. If only he were here again. And I just have this vision of him coming here trying to detail a car and how much he would hate his life. Okay, now it's time. Do our high oil pressure mode and flash this thing. I'm also gonna just go through and check faults real quick. Lambda, 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 lambda. I forgot to plug the oxygen sensors in. I often feel my life is a series of steps to either prevent myself from making a mistake or recovering from myself making a mistake. Now, because this is a brand new power link, it's gonna need to update. Once you have that, plug it into the car, and then we'll walk through and do our tuning process. The big thing is make sure that your battery voltage is good. If the battery voltage drops too low, you can end up bricking your ECM. Version 1, crackle sport mode only. Let's go. Sorry, Dusty, but you're a pops and bangs boy now. And now, we wait. Just don't be in a hurry for this kind of stuff. Our flash is finished. That took about 35, 40 minutes, give or take. You got some more warnings on here that you're probably gonna have some lights on in the car. Not worried about it. It'll all go off right when we cycle the key and then drive the car. Sounds good. See, we got some bubbling coming out from the coolant. All this smoke is fine because remember, we were touching the exhaust, the turbo, the manifold, just grease from hands and gloves, all burns off. So I would call that good. Here's what's gonna happen next. I'm just gonna let this run for about 10 minutes in the shop. You don't have to sit and watch that. You get to go from here to cool driving footage just like that. Okay. It runs, it drives, sounds good. The crackles are excellent. I can't wait to really tick off the owner of this car with it. As much as I would like to be in this car and just hammer the crap out of it, there's a 500-mile clutch break-in procedure that if we don't follow, it's gonna void the warranty. We do have boost, it sounds good. This thing's gonna be awesome. Don't do it, Charles, don't do it. The clutch is definitely a performance clutch. It's, oh, clutch went to the floor. Uh-oh, that's not good at all. Uh-oh. Oh, no, 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 no. That's not good. Okay, we made it back. As you saw while we were on the test drive, I probably said some no-no words. I found the problem, and it's best case scenario. That bleeder block that I put on popped off the slave cylinder. You may remember when we were first doing that, I think I made a comment that said something to the effect of, sometimes these bleeder blocks don't play nice with certain release bearings. This one, case in point. The one the customer provided didn't fit at all. The one that I had that was aftermarket, it fit, everything bled at high pressure and me pumping the clutch, and it just popped off. So I'm gonna put the factory one back on. We are going to re-bleed the clutch and drive it again before we give it back to Dustin. Kind of best case scenario. I'm happy I don't have to pull the transmission out, but I'm not happy that it happened. That may be the final straw of me ever using an aftermarket bleeder block again, because this is not the first time this kind of thing has happened. Okay, so after our little side quest that we just had, we're back in the car. It actually feels great. It feels better now than it did before, so maybe there was an issue with that bleeder block, like from the get. I'm gonna do a couple laps. Again, we give the car back to Dustin, let him rock it, then we get to do some ripping. So, our man Dustin did break-in mileage of 500 or so miles for the clutch. Actually, over 1,000 miles he did. What a guy. The thing I like about this turbo is this should give us a bunch more power with OEM-like drivability, and I love that. Sounds good, definitely good power. Man, I wish they would have came out with this for the 19s before mine had all the incidents, but it's good. Good spool, good RPM band. Oh, and you can, he left the crackles on it. That's amazing. All right, now it is time to see just how much horsepower to the wheels we actually got from all of those modifications. Dustin, what's your power guess?
Going with 420.
420 sounds like a great guess to me. Let's let Ian do his thing and see what we get.
What?
That feels a little light, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. I'm wondering if the 1% ethanol is messing with it.
So, Dustin's putting a little bit of 93 octane gasoline in his car, and what we're trying to figure out, since our ethanol content was right at the top of the maximum, we want to make sure that we're not hitting any kind of fail-safe with too much ethanol. This may do nothing. It may do something. It's what we're going to find out. Yeah, so I think that's about where we are.
Yep.
We'll have to look and see what the actual ethanol content was, but likely under 40 gained us almost 20 more horsepower. So if you're running right on that threshold, you're probably not gonna see max horsepower. I'm actually really excited about that. That proves that it matters.
Sure. Absolutely. That's wild. That's wild, dude.
Okay, Dustin, good power, good torque, factory drivability, and most importantly, I really appreciate you spending the time to clean your car before I got it.
Hey man, look, I heard all the jokes that you made about me already. Never again, sir.
Never again.
Until you get inside.
Oh yeah, well, I expect nothing but for you to rip this thing from now on, all the time, everywhere you go.
That means that you fix it, correct?
It's always a great day when you don't blow up your car on the dyno, and I'm pretty happy with those horsepower numbers. However, I think we actually could have gotten even more power than we did. But first, we gotta talk about this boost hose right here. So this is the factory hose that goes into the intercooler. This is the one that came off of that car. And I don't know that I mentioned this or not. That car had 141-ish thousand miles. One of the very first times we got into full boost, the hose was popping off. When I took it off and gave it a squish, it's really soft and squishy. So a tip when you're doing these kind of jobs, give your hose a little squishy. Make sure they're not feeling like too squishy or too worn. Now, how could we have gotten more horsepower out of that car? Right at E40, we had whatever it was, 384 something horsepower. We added 1 gallon of 93 octane. Just that little change gave us 20 more horsepower. When you're right at that threshold of E40, the car will start to pull power down. I'd be targeting somewhere between E25 and E30 to really get the most power out of that car. If we wanted to go further with our ethanol, we would need to add multi-port injection and definitely a low pressure fuel pump, maybe even more mod software. Who knows? That may be something we do at some point in time, but if that were my car, like I said, I'd be chasing that E25 to E30 number to really get the most out of all those mods that we did. This was a big job, and I would guess this is probably about 20 or so hours of book time. So we're gonna do something new, and let me know what you guys think of this. We are going to give this 4 out of 5 Charleses for level of difficulty, 5 being the most difficult, 1 being the easiest thing to do. So big thanks to the folks at Integrated Engineering for hooking us up with all those parts. Remember, there's a discount code down in the comments and in the description so you can save some money and do a whole bunch of dope mods to your car. And of course, big thanks to our detailing man, Dustin, for letting me have his car for way too long. So with that, I'm out. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you again next time.